Primehook National Wildlife Refuge is a natural haven on the coast of Delaware that's been enjoyed by generations of visitors. But more than a decade of major storms, culminating with Hurricane Sandy in 2012, wreaked havoc with the refuge and communities surrounding it, inundating them with massive salty tides from Delaware Bay.
So the salt water was devastating to the system, destroyed just about all of the vegetation.
As the tide would be going out, there were these cliffs with water just pouring down, and then it would be completely underwater when the tide came in.
And that just kept expanding more and more, causing flooding, took out a road.
There were times when we couldn't come home until low tide.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which is responsible for managing Primehook, wanted to make sure that when they rebuilt, they did so in a way that strengthened the local ecology for everyone, wildlife and people alike.
We know that we're going to see more frequent, intense storms, and so we didn't want to put it back into a situation that was vulnerable to the next storm, the next hurricane, the next nor'easter.
To make sure they were going to rebuild in the most effective way, the Fish and Wildlife Service turned to science, commissioning a series of high-tech computer models to see how a variety of approaches would affect the system over time. Was there a better way of managing the refuge? For several decades, more than 4,000 acres at Primehook had been maintained as a freshwater habitat for popular game birds, like ducks and geese, by using a complex engineering system that blocked the daily tidal flow of saltwater from the bay into neighboring marshland. What the computer models concluded was something the refuge staff had long suspected, that the best way to move forward was to open the system back up to the natural flow of water, working with Mother Nature to strengthen her own natural defenses and create a more resilient coastline.
Under natural conditions, this entire landscape would be a classic mid-Atlantic salt marsh, and these marshes have been growing here for hundreds, maybe even 1,000 years.
The more salt marsh you have, when you actually have water that comes over the dunes from storms, the salt marsh acts like a sponge. It absorbs a lot of that water, which is the benefit to our neighbors and the infrastructure, the roads, and the wildlife. So it really serves a lot of purposes.
As well as helping control the aggressive surges of water from storms and sea level rise, salt marshes are habitats for an amazing range of plants and animals, from birds to fish to grasses to insects. And these marshes can even affect climate change directly by pulling harmful carbon out of the atmosphere and converting it to a useful nutrient in the soil.
Delaware's the lowest lying state in America. People may not like the idea of climate change or sea level rise. They may not believe it's real. We know it's real. You can't really shovel against the tide, but we can do some smart things. And these are some smart things.
And in just 18 months, the Fish and Wildlife Service and their partners completed one of the largest and most complex coastal restorations ever attempted on the East Coast, a model for sustainable coastal resiliency around the country and around the world.
We have a beautiful new about 1.5 mile beach with a nice low wide dune and a nice back barrier platform that can take the brunt of any storm surge that we have. And then we've, through dredging operations, restored the tidal connections in the interior of the wetland.
And now that all of that initial work is done, what largely remains is to monitor the system and to let the natural processes of the marsh continue to grow and improve on their own.
It's kind of a feedback where the more vegetation that gets rooted in areas, the more seeds it'll produce and start seeding more into the future. So every year, it's going to get a little bit closer to kind of a more natural system.
Sandy maybe was a blessing in disguise for us. Not only did it bring needed resources to make this happen, it awakened people to the need to let the natural system work. And hopefully this natural system will work, and I think it will.